Welcome to our new episode of HR Visionaries. Today we're going to talk to Lauren from Lattice. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to our new episode of HR Visionaries. I'm looking forward to my guest today, Lauren. Lauren, thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Lauren, can you introduce yourself in maybe 5 or 6 sentences?
Absolutely, yes. So I'm Lauren Hoe, and I head up our technical recruiting team at Lattice. Lattice is a people management platform that provides solutions to what I like to think of as options for employee happiness and employee engagement. And I personally focus on the technical recruiting side. So engineering, product, design, research, folks like that is what my team focuses on bringing to Lattice and hopefully keeping them happily employed for a long time.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Can you tell us a bit more what you guys actually do? So keeping your employees happy is obviously a very important task, not just for you, but also for your clients. So can you tell us a bit more about what Lattice is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think we're not just a product, we're a platform. So we're really focused on the whole employee lifecycle from beginning to exit. And it's things like goal settings, one-on-one meetings, setting up the agenda and action items and private notes. We have a compensation tool. We have different pieces of engagement when it comes to pulse surveys, annual surveys, things like that. And then most recently, we launched our HRIS as well, which is super exciting. And I think for HR professionals who've been using Lattice for a long time, it's a really big milestone. So we're really looking at, like I said, the employees from beginning and onboarding and everything until we're hearing your feedback after you've been at the company for 90 days and how it's going and working toward those promotions and things like that. So I think it's the kind of platform that both HR professionals and employees are really familiar with. And we want to make both sides of that coin really delighted to use our product. What I really love too, and maybe I'm biased because I've been part of design recruiting and things like that. I just think our design is so well thought out and, like I said, delightful. When you enter Lattice and you're using the product, it's beautiful, it's easy to use. You feel at ease using it as opposed to struggling to find where to use things or having sort of an unpleasant user experience. So I like to think that we kind of get you into the platform and get you hooked as you're using it through the design.
Amazing. Can you tell us a bit more about the name? So how did you come up with the name?
Well, I can't take credit for any of that, but I like to think of, the visual of a lattice coming together and our logo of the interconnecting pieces is so wonderfully emblematic of what the employee experience should be, right? HR shouldn't be pushed off into the corner, something that you never think about. It really should be part of the whole employee experience. And so for pieces of like I said, your compensation, your goals to all be intertwined is a really great metaphor. And so I think that's really where the founders and those first founding team members came up with that. Thank you for asking.
So I must say I like Lattice a lot, in particular when it comes like in a burger or something. So so I found the name very remarkable, and it sticks, right? So it's something you hardly forget because it's like, okay, when you first hear the name, it's kind of like, okay, why? And then, okay, I got it, and then your brain kind of saves this as something. Okay, now I know what lattice is.
Yeah, I also think for me, the image that also comes up is the idea of like a lattice in a garden, which in a sense is like providing shade or kind of coverage. And there's something really comforting about that. So that was something that I thought of when I was interviewing at the company a couple of years ago, that idea of both interconnectedness and comfort. And so I really think that it was quite a clever name that they came up with.
Okay, this is pretty cool. And so for an HR professional who works at a company who creates products, who creates solutions for HR professionals, so how can I picture your daily your job? Well, looking basically at things you use for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I definitely log into Lattice pretty much straight away. So with my team, we use the product to both set, sometimes it's private goals, if it's things that folks really want to work on, but they don't need the entire company to know that they're focusing on, as well as public goals for the whole company to see. So they really understand, what is recruiting working on? What are they working toward? In a sense, like, what is their mission for the next quarter or half? We also use it to set our one-on-one agendas. And so I have one-on-ones with my direct reports throughout the week, and we add to that agenda as the week goes on, pop in reminders of things we want to talk about. And I'm also using it when it comes to like the analytics. So again, like when my direct reports do their pulse surveys, I can see confidentially, it's not via their names, but I can see sort of the ups and downs of their responses to our pulse survey questions. Those are some of the things that I immediately go to when I open it up. We're just finishing up a compensation and promotion cycle as well. So I was in the product doing performance reviews, self-reviews, upward reviews, and then using the tool to look at where my team falls within the compensation band, if they're up for a compensation increase, what that looks like. I mean, it's like I said, it's sort of one of the first things that I log into. There's a few tools that I'm always using, and Lattice is definitely one of those like 3 or 4 that is at the top of my Okta screen. Is that helpful?
It's very helpful indeed, given, well, we have been talking to people in the in our podcast who mentioned Lattice as something they use to improve their team performance. So therefore, it's actually pretty cool that you can give us some live examples also from the inside. That's pretty useful indeed.
I think it's also something that is delightful about the product is the feedback tool. And you have the options of doing it privately, directly to that person, publicly, ideally it's praise for everyone to see, or private plus manager. And so, I see so often cross-functional partners coming in and saying, thank you so much for your great partnership. X, Y, or Z was the result. And then, your manager has visibility to that. And I think that that's so great, because sometimes you're like, this project went great, or we learned something new together, just those things that you want to share. And you're like, where do I put it? And so to have it be in this place where it can really live on in perpetuity is really wonderful. I'm personally very much about kind of bringing joy and kindness, whether it's at work or outside of work. So I think that piece of the tool really resonates with me personally.
Can you tell us a bit? So, is your company is based in the Bay Area? So,
we are a remote first company. So we do have offices in San Francisco, New York, and London, but we do have employees all over the world. There's a small number of roles that are office based. So for example, right now we're hiring on the sales team, and we're looking to really start a new function essentially on the sales team. And they are going to be required to have some in-office time to solidify that team and really make it successful. Most other roles are remote first. And I think that that's been great. And we have been able to attract incredible talent because they can be based anywhere all over the country. And then there are also some other countries that we're able to hire in as well. We just hired our first colleagues in Portugal, which I'm super excited about. I was lucky enough to get the chance to go out there and visit the country for the first time. And it felt, so it sounds silly, but it felt very latticey. The people there were welcoming and warm and passionate, but they also have a desire for work-life balance. And so I think that was one of the main reasons why we chose to go to Portugal, is we felt that culturally it really aligned with that sort of come in, do great work, but have a life outside of work as well. So yes, we do have those physical offices, but it is nice that it's very much optional at this point, and I see that for the foreseeable future as well.
As you just said, so life outside work is super important these days. And how do you communicate this to potential hires?
Great question. Well, for my team, I really encourage them to, whenever comfortable, share personal examples, whether it's how leadership shows us that from the top down or how they live it themselves. So I think being really transparent about what life is like at Lattice is important in the recruiting process. And like I said, whenever recruiters are comfortable, and interviewers sharing about how they find that work-life balance, that's the best way to have it really resonate with folks. Like I'm personally very open about volunteering at my kids' school. And, we took a big vacation this year and took our kids to Europe. And it was completely supported by my boss. Our CEO takes time off and spends time with his family. It's just very much, it needs to be lived by each person. And so I think sharing those examples is a really important way in the recruiting process for folks to understand, what are the values of Lattice, both us as we build a product, but how we treat our employees and how we sort of live that day to day.
Yeah, I think super important thing, right? So to also give real life examples, because it means so much for so many people, but it means so many different things to so many people, right? So what does work-life balance actually mean? So therefore, real life examples is probably the best approach to this.
Right. Like there's the black and white benefits that you have, right? We have great health insurance, we have unlimited PTO, all of those things. But you can have unlimited PTO and the kind of culture where no one takes a day off. Or you could have unlimited PTO where your boss is coming to you. I've seen it in my own one-on-one agenda where my boss says, it's been a while since you've taken a day off. Let's look at the calendar together and think about where you can take some days for yourself, time with your family, whatever you want to do. And so to share those actual lived experiences of how we are supporting our culture is really important.
Yeah, how long have you been with the company?
I've been with Lattice for about 2.5 years. And
what did you do before joining Lattice?
Yeah, so I moved into tech in 2011, and I started as a recruiting coordinator at a great company called Eventbrite, and really learned so much of the ropes during my time there. Then I next. Why? First of all, it had an incredible recruiting team that really showed me the power of supporting each other and having wins be team wins, not individual wins. So I think that really set me up for healthy team culture from there on. Our boss was great about celebrating wins, showed us how to share candidates, right? If you're talking with someone and they seem really intelligent and thoughtful and just like a good fit for the company, but their skills aren't quite right for that role, share them with the rest of the team and see if there's a role that's open, right? Just seeing that from the beginning of my time in tech was really impactful. It was also the kind of culture where I think being genuine, kindness was important, all of those things. Again, I've really found that in each place that I've worked. Then after my time at Eventbrite, I went on to Slack. Oh, go ahead.
Lauren, quick question. So was it something you were aware when you joined, or was it something that you kind of learned when after you had signed the contract?
Say that question one more time.
Sorry. So that team culture, that appreciation, the culture of appreciation, was it something that you were aware when you joined the company, or was it something that you learned when you were there? So was it something that it was kind of a decision making, or that it was part of your decision making process?
Well, I think it's twofold. One piece is I loved everyone I spoke to in the interview process. So I think that said something to me at that point. But I will say I was fairly naive. It was my first job in tech. I'd had a role elsewhere for about 4 or so years in a different industry, and I was moving into tech, and I just sort of, was a little bit naive. And so I do think that in a sense, the other side is I think I lucked into it a little bit. So the interviews were wonderful. I was so excited to sign my contract. But then once I was there, I feel like it was a little bit of luck that the culture resonated with me so much. And that I made real lifelong friends that we still keep in touch, et cetera. In fact, I'll come back to Eventbrite, but fast forward many years, and I found Lattice through a former Eventbrite colleague, and he referred me into the role. We'd stayed in touch, et cetera. So I will say that once I was looking to make a move and I was interviewing at Slack, I knew how important culture was. And so that's when I was much more aware before signing my contract that I wanted to make sure it resonated with me. And again, those interviews were wonderful. I think I asked much more thoughtful questions about things like, what are the values of the company and what is the team culture like, et cetera. And that led me to staying at Slack for 5.5 years, right? Like, it was an incredible fit. It was an incredible company. Some of the most amazing people, talented people I've ever worked with. I feel so grateful for that time. And actually, the person who introduced me to Slack was also an Eventbrite colleague. So, it really was, I think of it very much as an incredibly lucky experience to start at Eventbrite, go have this amazing run at Slack, and then have another Eventbrite colleague introduce me to Lattice, and something very similar there as well. By the time I was at Lattice, I was in a real different phase of my life where I'm a mom to 3 young girls, and I think that I work very hard and do great work. But life outside of work is also super important. So I made sure that was really clear when I was representing myself in my interviews. And I was reading how they responded to that transparency. And it was very positive. And it's been a really great 2.5 years so far, in terms of, like I said, how I represented myself and how Lattice represented themselves as well.
Well, you talked a lot about, during the interview process, finding out whether people fit, whether culture fit. How do you ensure this level of honesty, given, sometimes you have people in front of you who are like on paper amazing, and you're just like so intrigued to hire them. And then I think it's very dangerous sometimes to overlook flaws that it may turn out to be very, very severe in the long run. However, it kind of hooks you, right? So how do you ensure this in interview processes?
I think it's really important when folks are interviewing to write down a few things. One should be a list of what are your top 3 things that are really important in your next role. It could be actual job responsibilities, team culture, work-life balance. It might be, in the US, health benefits, things like that, right? Maybe you only want to go somewhere that has 401k matching because you're really focused on planning for your retirement. Whatever it is, you need to list those out and make sure that where you're interviewing aligns to those things, because you're saying, this is going to make me happy every day. This is going to make me reassured every day. I need to make sure that lines up. I think then you also need to write down, what are things that they should know about me, right? Maybe in the next year, you have a goal of moving to a different country. Are they going to be able to support that? Most folks don't want to switch jobs every year, every 2 years. You want to be somewhere for a while, really be comfortable, learn, and see yourself progress somewhere. So sharing those things that are important to you in the next couple of years, or the way that you work, or really anything that you need, again, to be happy every day, is really important. And then I think having a list of questions that you're asking throughout the process is great. I personally recommend asking some questions to every single interviewer, see how folks answer, especially about culture and the things that matter to you. Because of course, if you have, maybe the 401k is is one of your top things, you'll get that answered, and that you don't have to ask every single person. But asking those culture questions, the things that tell you about daily life at that company, are important to get multiple perspectives, so you can see how different folks respond to the culture, their take on it, and then let your both intellect and gut reaction inform you about how to move forward.
How many interviews do people go through before you hire them at Lattice?
We typically try to stick to about 4 rounds. So it's typically a call with a recruiter, a call or a Zoom with the hiring manager, and then a round of interviews typically split into 2 days. It does depend on the team. You know, some will have a presentation or a portfolio review, things like that. But we do try to keep it very streamlined. I think, especially in this market, in this environment, folks are either employed and trying to squeeze in interviews, and time is really precious, or they have unfortunately maybe been impacted by a layoff and interviewing is their full-time job, and it can be really exhausting. So we really tried to look closely at our interview process and have the most necessary interviews possible, both to show our culture and show what it is like to work at Lattice, as well as share the competencies that will set you up for success in this role. Do you need to be a great collaborator? Do you need to be whatever the sort of components of the role are that we need to make sure we're testing for that. So we try to keep it quite streamlined. And we also want to make sure that candidates are really aware of what the process is from the beginning so that we can set up that timeline for success.
How do you conduct interviews? So how could I convince you to be the right candidate, not in terms of like, hey, I want this role, whatever it takes, but rather than, hey, how can I make sure this is the best fit for me and my career?
Yeah. So I would say for Lattice, and really for all companies that I've worked at, it's definitely important to read their careers page, read about their values. I recommend looking at Glassdoor reviews. That's one side of the story, right? That's not the full picture, but I think seeing the pros and cons there and what current and past employees have to say, or folks who've interviewed there, their experiences, that's really important. So really diving into those company values, the reviews and things online, obviously taken with a grain of salt. Most companies, in my assessment, do behavioral-based interviewing. So understanding what that means and being familiar with what that will look like. It's typically a tell me about a time when type questions. I also really recommend that folks prepare their answers and use some sort of, I don't want to say formula, but for example, the STAR method, I think, is a really great way to show, you know, what happened, what was your response, and what was the result. So you're getting that full picture to the interview team, as opposed to, oh, there's this problem and it was stressful and now I'm on the other side. It's like, okay, give me a clear idea of what was the issue, how did you respond, what was the result, and then even further, what did you learn? Would you do it the same way? Would you do something differently? Especially at Lattice, I think interviewers respond really well to self-reflection and being open about what didn't go right and what you learned from it. I think our CEO, Jack, is really great about talking about failures and how they can inform so much, sometimes more than a win, right? And so I've seen interviewers really respond well when candidates are just open about, man, I really made a bad judgment call there, or we took it one direction and it did not end up successful, because that shows you how you can maybe see around that corner the next time. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I give to candidates is try to really be open about where you've learned and grown and how you've risen up from failure.
It's super interesting thing you just said. So I totally agree that you can learn so much from being open about stuff that didn't go perfectly right, or that well, perhaps even went fatally wrong. Well, fatally probably not, but pretty wrong. So how do you maintain that culture at Lattice, that this is something people should talk about? So when I imagine, okay, companies growing, you hire new managers, how do you ensure that they share the same approach, the same vision towards talking about failure as a learning opportunity?
I think one way that we maintain that is through talking about failures pretty openly, especially in all hands meetings. So we have bi-weekly all company meetings, and I can think of several examples right off the top of my head right now of where maybe the product team or the sales team have come in, and of course we share wins and we share customer success stories and all that, but we also come in and say, hey, remember we talked about this a few months ago and this was our aim? Here's where we missed and here's why we think that happened. And to have that safe space of saying that in front of a room of 650 people is really a powerful message. And so I think as we're still growing and, we just launched our HRIS, we're still launching new products, to be where we are and still supporting mistakes being made is incredibly important. I still remember my time at Slack. We were really supportive of mistakes. And the same thing, our CEO there was so great about saying how mistakes are where you learn the most. And so I think when you have it be an open discussion, people who are well respected and great at their job saying, we made a mistake here, or it was a miss, or we set a goal and we didn't hit it. Here's how we're going to do it better next time. That's really the way to keep it a consistently safe space to make those mistakes.
I find this super fascinating. Even it requires so much strength also to be in front of people as a leader to talk about but failure. But I think the example you present there is incredibly strong to encourage other people not to hide any mistakes, but to be open about those. And worst you can do is like, okay, drag on a process, drag on with mistakes for very long until they accumulate to a really big problem, and you should solve it in the first place.
I think we also have a great culture of doing retros or retrospective meetings after a launch, a project ending, sometimes in the middle of a project even. We're launching a new thing called a QPR, quarterly people review. And essentially it's really leveraging all of the data that we have and showing each department sort of, all the things, budget, headcount, non-performance reviews, pulse surveys, all of those things, and pulling them together and saying like, what's the health of your org? And so I think that doing that is incredibly important to leverage our tool, but also we're doing it for the first time, and that team that's pulling that together, we're having a retro after the first one. So that when we get ready for the next quarter, we are already in the middle of our project iterating on what went well, what didn't go well. Safe space, we got to do this again. Let's do it better next time. So I like that we're doing that retro in the middle of a project in a sense. So that's also really important to keep that sort of failure at the forefront culture.
What was your most favorite moment at Lattice so far?
Ooh, well, that's a great question. A bunch come to mind. So how many am I allowed to say? How can I, let me go.
Okay, 3, because it's like just the first day after Thanksgiving. So 3 is fine.
Three. Okay, we'll be indulgent. So I think one was really early when I found out. I joined in June, and of September that year, we announced our compensation product. And I just remember feeling like Lattice was really living up to what it says it is. Our compensation tool, one of the aims is to really create transparency at companies for employees so they understand how are they being compensated, where are they in band. Having informed conversations with their managers is so important, and it really helps people take control of their monetary situation as well as the future of their career. And so I just felt like we were really creating a product that lived up to our values. That made me super proud, and I was like so glad that I joined, and it felt wonderful. Launching our HRIS was also so exciting. I sort of, I'm not lucky enough to be an engineer or a product manager or someone building this, someone selling it, but I had helped was part of the team that staffed the team that did that, right? And so to see these people that I was lucky enough to interview and help onboard and see them create this thing from scratch was just very exciting. And I knew how much hard work went into it. So that was incredible. And I think my third one on a more personal note was making our first hire in Portugal. He's actually here. I'm in San Francisco. He's here in San Francisco, visiting for the first time. I'll get to meet him tomorrow. And really expanding a team to a brand new country was really exciting. I think it's going to increase just our reach of customers, our awareness of different cultures, and that was a very exciting moment.
Well, I can imagine that, well, going to a completely new country, hiring people there, well, expanding cultures and well, integrating this into the Lattice culture is probably super exciting, but also a bit of a challenge, I guess.
Definitely. A lot of thought went into where we would expand and why. And it was certainly nerve-wracking to make that decision. There are incredible places all over the world with incredible talent, but we really felt like this was the right spot for us. And so far it's proved to be really wonderful experience and really kind candidates. And it's been a very positive so far.
Cool. Lauren, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for letting us know so much about the Lattice culture, about well, talking about failures. I really love that a lot. I think it's super useful for everyone who listens, and thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really wonderful to chat with you as well.
Cool. And I hope you guys enjoyed also our conversation about when we talked about how to deal with failures. Stay tuned. Okay, I do that again. That was shit. Excuse me. Okay, Raisa, I'll do that again. Thanks a lot for listening in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, talking about how to deal with failures. See you next time.